So business is all about leveraging assets. And so it's only fitting that a business school entrance test would reward you for leveraging assets. Now, probably the most overlooked asset on GMAT problem-solving questions is the answer choices themselves. And so we'll talk right now about how looking down can help you raise your GMAT score up. And what we mean by that is make sure to consider the answer choices before you start doing math. Look at what the answer choices tell you, and this problem here will be a good example. Now, it asks for the square root of 2,209. And before you pull out that calculator or slide rule, recognize you won't have those on test day. And so we need to reason our way through this by leveraging our assets. And the assets we have are mainly the answer choices below. Because if we look at these answer choices, we should recognize relatively quickly that we need a number that when squared ends in a 9. And take a look at answer choice B, 41. If you square that, you'll multiply 41 times 41. Your first step will be to multiply those ones together. That'll give you a 1, not a 9. And so you don't actually need to finish that problem. You'll recognize that that number will end in a 1, not the required 9, so the answer can't be B. And the same logic will hold for answer choice C. 45 squared is going to end in a 5 because when you multiply 45 times 45, your first step is to multiply those units digits, recognize that it'll end in a 5, and then you'll work to the left from there. And so we've already violated that requirement that it ends in a 9, and so we're done with both answer choices B and C. Now that's part of a family of GMAT content called units digit number properties, where you can recognize that you can shortcut calculations by looking at the units digits, and sometimes the questions will ask you specifically for it. So you'll want to practice with that. But for this problem, now we're done with 2 answers. But if we look at the others, 37, if you square 7, it'll end in a 9. 47, same logic. And 53, same logic. 53 squared, well 3 times 3 ends in a 9. And so we'll need to find another way to use the answer choices to our advantage here. Now, what's important to recognize here is that we have a range of answer choices that are fairly spread apart. And while each of them individually might be time-consuming or somewhat difficult to square, the numbers between them are not. If we take a look at 37 and 47, well, 40 lies in between. And 40 isn't that difficult to square because it ends in a 0. 40 squared is 1,600. And 1,600 is less than the 2,209 that we need. And so anything less than that, such as answer choice A, has to be wrong. It won't be big enough. And so we're done with answer choice A. If we find the same logic between 47 and 53, 50 is a number that brackets between those two, and we can recognize that 50 squared is 2,500. And so anything bigger than that, so answer choice E, would also have to be wrong. And so by bracketing those answer choices with easier numbers to multiply, those ending in 0, we can get down to answer choice D without doing any 2-digit by 2-digit math. And so the correct answer here is D, but the takeaway is more important. The answer choices are part of the question. And so you should always look down below the question at the answer choices before you begin the question. And that way you can gain some insight, whether you can estimate, whether you can use number properties, whether the answer choices give you clues about the type of math you'll need to use. And so, to be successful on the GMAT, leverage your assets and recognize that the most often overlooked asset is the answer choices themselves.